Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killed. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Well, good evening, Alaskans. Good to be with you again this Tuesday afternoon, evening time frame. I am Ben Carpenter. I will be your host tonight for Oversight Live. Oversight Live exists to help us understand what's going on with state government. We know that it is cost prohibitive to get down to Juneau and watch what's happening in person. It's got to catch a plane, got to take a ferry. It's hard to get there. But much of what is done down there is done, at least officially, is done on the record and recorded, and we've got access to that. So I am bringing to you recorded content from the legislative sessions, and we're going to preview it or review it together. The beauty of doing this is that I can answer questions that you might have. Maybe you've got a really good question and I can't answer it, but I'll do my best to find it. Why is that the case? Because I spent 6 years in the legislature. I have spent just enough time there to kind of understand what's going on, and I don't mind sharing that with you. So here. This is something that I've been saying since I got involved in politics here in the state after retiring from the military. We've got to grow the pool of people who are participating in our state government and in our government in general. Okay. That requires us to be educated about what's happening. So that's the nature. Oversight Live. That's what it's for. It is for us to spend some time together, a place where we can ask questions and help each other out and do better at providing oversight of our government, because that's our responsibility as voters. We're supposed to provide oversight. If it's our government, we have to claim that, right? All right. If you're watching on the recording, you can email me questions. If you have questions or comments, producer@oversightlive.com will get me an email, and I will do my best to answer your questions either by email or bring your question on air. If you've got a question, it's likely someone else has got the question. So we will use it for our own edification. And we're going to try to have fun doing it. All right. So tonight we're going to get started. Thank you all for joining tonight. And we're going to get started with presentation in Anchorage, actually, that's occurring at the LIO, the Legislative Information Office. And the House Finance Committee has been meeting there since beginning of last week, I believe. Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, that's irrelevant. They've been meeting there since the beginning of this special session, and have been hosting the meetings there, and people call in, people Zoom in or come in through Microsoft Teams and brief the committee in Anchorage. So it is an opportunity for you to show up. And as I'm looking at the preview here, I can see the seats that are in the audience, and most of them are empty, which leads me to believe this notion that if we just move the legislature to the road system, we probably would have more of that, right? especially if you were on a special session in the summertime, you got better things to do than to go to a legislative meeting, right? All right. That may be true. But when you want to know, things are recorded. You can go to KTOO and see the recording, or you can join us here and ask your questions, because there's no one to ask a question if you're sitting there in the meeting or you're or you're watching KTOO. So that's what I bring you, the ability to answer some questions that you might have. All right, let's get started. We want to see Adam Prestige, who is the president of Glenfarne, Alaska. I believe that's how it's labeled. Anyway, he's going to introduce himself, I think. And he's going to present to the committee here kind of an update on where we're at. So let's get started.
And if either of you would like to start us off.
Thank you, Coach Sheriff Foster. This is Adam Prestige, president of Glenfarne, Alaska. It'll just be myself presenting today, and really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. Obviously, taking this into a special session underscores the seriousness and importance of this issue, and so we recognize the time and effort that each of you are putting into it. We recognize all of the work that's gone into this special session and all of the testimony that's gone forward, a lot of supportive comments, a lot of very thoughtful details, analysis. And what I want to underscore from the Glenfarne side is that this tax bill is critical to the project going forward. The Alaska LNG project is a project with outstanding fundamentals. It's viable. It will make a tremendous benefit to the state. Having this tax bill in place is an important part of the puzzle of putting this project together and taking it forward to FID. That said, before I dive into some of the details of the project and why this is important, and give some kind of concluding remarks on our view of the project, I want to just say that on behalf of myself and Glenfarne, we're very proud of the work that we've done on this project. When we came into the Alaska LNG project, when we first started having conversations with AGDC over 2 years ago, this wasn't the project that it is today. This project was one that was being considered to be defunded by the legislature. It had been around for a long time. It was in a shifting between phases of development and design. And since that time, we've done an extraordinary level of work with communities in Alaska, with the state government. We're very proud of the work that we've done with our Alaskan customers and gas buyers, with Alaskan contractors, with Alaskan labor unions, to make sure that we deliver this project the right way for Alaska. And so we're very proud to have advanced this project further than anyone has ever taken it before. And we're optimistic about its ability to go forward with the collaboration of the legislature and putting the right bill together here. We're aligned on our interests. Not only is this project good for the state of Alaska in terms of the general economic benefits, but Glenfarne and the state of Alaska are both equity owners of this project, of 8-Star Alaska LLC. So we have this pure corporate alignment that exists by matter of fact. We all want lower cost gas for Alaskans. And in order for the project to be attractive, to draw equity investment and allow the project to be funded and built, we're all aligned in our interest in having the project be low cost and deliver a good return for investors.
Not only are we aligned in the project here, I would argue that we asked Glenfarne to come in and take it over. We offered it, right? We as Alaskans, through our intermediaries, right, our representatives in the legislature, created AGDC, and AGDC is the one that awarded Glenfarne this project. Now, not every legislator or not every Alaskan may think that that's a good idea, but that's the reality. Alaskans and Alaska has asked Glenfarne to move forward with this. So yes, we may be equity investors. We may be on the same playing field, at least right now we are. But we don't forget that this is our project. Like, this is what we wanted to have happen, and why we spent $1 billion tax dollars to get us to this point, right? So we got a lot invested as Alaska government, as Alaskans, in seeing a pipeline get built.
And Mr. Prestige,
One of the ways,
I'm very sorry. folks online, legislators online who are listening, they're not able to hear very well. They said it's a little kind of in and out a little bit. It's just kind of hard to hear. I'm just checking to see if there's anything that can be done with our IT folks. And sorry about that, Mr. Prestige. Please continue.
Certainly, Chair Foster. Is it an issue with my audio? Am I coming clear? Am I coming through okay?
I think we can hear you okay. The volume in the room could probably be turned up a little bit, but
Okay.
it's the folks who are online that are having a hard time hearing. We also have with us Representative Underwood. Thank you for being here. And so please continue, Mr. Prestige.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Adam Prestige, continuing. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is our work with communities that have gone into what is presented in this bill now. That is the work, that is the result of months and months of discussion with the different municipalities, with the borough mayors. One of the results of that has been the Community Impact Fund that is meant to provide an additional benefit to the communities during the construction period to offset construction impacts. That's a feature that's not required under the existing tax law. That's an additional element that we heard as a priority from the mayors and we're willing to add to it. Similarly, we've made our commitment and we've discussed it extensively to incorporate the Fairbanks spur line into the plan for the project, and we are sticking by that that plan. There's been some discussion of an additional of the additional 90 million that this bill allocates from state revenues to communities. We're supportive of that. That didn't come out of our discussions with the communities because we sought to address community needs, and what we heard from the communities was a need for the Community Impact Fund. The allocation of the 90 million is really up to the state legislature and up to the legislator. So we leave that to the body's discretion, and we're supportive of that. What I'll say about the bill in particular is obviously this project needs to work economically, and getting the provisions of the tax bill right is critical. If we don't pass this tax bill in the right way, the reality is that the project, and sorry, if I'll just pause, is my audio still coming through? I hear a lot of feedback and kind of static, so I want to make sure you're hearing me.
We can hear you okay. I'm told that folks who might be watching on Gavel online are able to hear fine. So I'm wondering if maybe folks maybe in the Juneau finance room, if you can't hear through the audio there very well, you might want to try the Gavel website. Also wanted to note that we do have with us Representative Moore as well as Representative Holland. Thank you for being here.
This really has nothing to do with pipelines, but if and you may not be aware, during the COVID crisis, there were legislators who wanted to conduct business, legislative business, from their homes, and wanted to get us set up on Teams and just do business by Teams. And myself and a number of others thought that was really a bad idea. Technology, as good as it is, and decisions that the legislature are having to make are not compatible all the time. And we really do need to be face to face for many of these conversations. And I understand why, at the beginning of the summer, why legislators might have things that they have already, planned with their families and can't be there. But, this is a monumental decision that the legislature is making. And I think that the place of business for the legislatures, especially with this committee, is physically at that committee location so that they can participate and represent the state in this very important conversation, right? I mean, this is why they get paid the big bucks.
And so with that, I think we'll go ahead and power through. Mr. Prestige, I think we can hear you okay on this end.
Okay, thank you, Chair Foster. I'll continue. What I want to be clear about is that without a tax bill being set in the past in the right way, this project is likely to face delays, be more expensive, and have a higher cost that will ultimately be passed on to consumers. And it generally makes the future of this project more uncertain, harder to define. When I talk about the tax bill being correct, at the right level, we've talked a lot about 6 cents. That was the original level set forth in the governor's proposal. Through a lot of discussions in different committees, in different municipalities, with the working groups, the last version of the bill, I guess there was prior to the amendment that went in there at the end of session, was a proposed level for a 6-cent volumetric tax on the pipeline and 12 cents on the LNG facility and the gas treatment facility, the carbon capture facility. The project can work at those levels. That effectively moves the average percent unit up to between 9 and 10 cents. Again, those are costs. The higher it goes, the more cost it puts on the project. So it's very important that we not increase that to a higher level than that. At the same time, we also want to make accommodations to the non-economic elements of the bill, including accommodations to the communities to make sure that they're getting their needs addressed. But we need to make sure that those accommodations don't go so far that they give individual communities the ability to decide whether or not this project goes forward by creating unilateral holdout value over negotiating community impacts. One last thing I want to make very clear as we look at this project is we have set up this project, and the contract structure and the regulatory structure is set up so that cost overruns are not a risk to the state or the ratepayers. The cost of the project will be paid through contracts with utilities in Alaska that have a fixed and knowable price over a 30-year period of time. Those contracts don't have an element that allows that price to adjust for cost overruns. Those contracts will be approved by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska on a transparent basis. And I know NSTAR was presenting yesterday on the pricing for that gas. And we stand by the presentation that NSTAR delivered. And again, this is set up in a way that doesn't expose the state or the individual ratepayers to cost overruns. And Glenfarne would be supportive of having additional language in the bill to make that explicitly clear. So I'll conclude my remarks. I'll keep it short and sweet. Again, there's been a lot said here, but we believe that this project is ready to go forward, and having the tax bill set forth in the right way is a critical component to that. It's really going to unlock a lot of the further development of the project and open up the opportunity to really close out all of the remaining elements of the project. So thank you very much.
Great.
So Frank asked a question, and I'm not exactly sure where you're coming from with this, because I mean, it's not even a thing that we can consider, right? Glenfarne's a for-profit company, and I think the disadvantage of Glenfarne being a 501c3 or replacing Glenfarne with a 501c3 is that you take away the profit motive. I mean, all of the growth in our economy, all of the growth that's coming through technology, it all comes through the profit motive. Like it's fine to have to solve problems with a 501c nonprofit organization that makes sense for that type of an organization or for that type of thing. But when you're talking about a mega project and multi-year projects, multiple contracts, much room for error, you need some sort of incentive to keep people focused on this over time. So I think the major disadvantage is that you lose the profit motive in an enterprise, and that's what makes America stand out. is we're a nation of profiteers. We're a nation of people that go out and build wealth and build things because we desire to do that, to grow and to have more. You put in you structure it as a nonprofit and you remove that incentive. So I think that's how I would answer your question, Frank, is it's the profit motive. You just remove it if it's not a profit driven company. That's probably true. Nonprofits don't pay taxes like our electrical co-ops. I mean, if you're an LLC, you're not paying taxes either, and you're still a for-profit company. But yeah, right. They don't pay taxes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prestige. Do we have any questions from the committee? Representative Schrage?
Coach Foster, this is actually to let you know that Representative Stapp has questions.
Oh, okay, thank you. We've got Representative Stapp and then Representative Galvin. Representative Stapp?
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, thank you, Co-Chair Foster. See you, Chair, to Mr. Preston. Say, Adam, appreciate you being here and taking time in your day to come back before the committee. So as you know, we've had a lot of testimony. The last kind of hearing we had with you guys, you basically identified, I want to say, 7 fundamental issues for the developer regarding the bill. I think 2 of the biggest ones were Section 5 of the bill and, of course, the volumetric tax level. So my first question to you is, do I have that right through the chair?
Mr. Prestige?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear that very loudly. There's a lot of static coming through my audio on Teams. But what I heard, if I'll repeat the question, is a question of whether one of the fundamental issues in the bill is the level of the alternative volumetric tax. Is that correct?
Representative Stapp?
Yeah, all this scripture. I think we identified 7 problems, and then most of the testimony basically corroborated that. It was the Section 5 of the bill, which is municipal objects to have a equity stake, and of course the volumetric portion. I think are the 2 most problematic, if memory serves me right, in your last testimony. Is that correct through the chair?
Mr. Prestige?
Hard to make an impact when you're on the phone. You got to be there.
Foster, if I'm hearing the question correctly, it was a question about the issues with Section 5 of the bill, which includes an equity option for the municipalities. When I speak about our desire to make accommodations for municipalities and for communities, but not having them go so far that they create a holdout value for the project, I am referring in large part to that section, which allows communities to either opt in or opt out of the alternative volumetric tax and to take equity in exchange for that tax relief. That's a portion of the bill that would fundamentally not work and would create a major roadblock, potentially prevent the project from going forward.
Okay, Paul, Mr. Co-Chair.
Representative Stapp?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully the audio is a little better. I don't know if it was on my end or your end. Okay, yeah, through the chair to Mr. Preston. Yeah, thank you for being crystal clear here, because I think the choice before us is going to be relatively simple. If we're going to be able to deliver this project in an equitable way, it's going to have to be in the framework that you guys can actually build in. So outside Section 5 and the volumetric the number being considerably higher than 6, can you remind me what 3 other items you flagged in this current version of the bill that you found problematic through the chair?
Mr. Prestige?
Thank you, Representative Stapp. If I recall, those were a number of issues that were in a prior version of the bill. Some of them, a lot of them were addressed through the amendment process when the bill was on the floor and are no longer present in this current version. So I don't have a list of 7 issues.
Representative Stapp?
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I got him. No, just appreciate it. I just want to put that on record so everyone's clear. Thank you, Coach Foster.
Great, thank you. Next up, I have Representative Galvin and then Bynum.
Hi there, Mr. Prestige. Thank you so much for being here. We've had a lot of exciting meetings since we've met last. And so my question is related to some information that we received yesterday from NSTAR. So they testified that regarding the gas sales contract that they have executed with you as 8-Star, and the largest news, frankly, was the fixed price of $16 per MCF. and that is really huge news for us to get that. That it means that ratepayers do not bear the risk of cost overruns or periods of low throughput. Both of those things were a concern of mine. And so my first question to you is, can you confirm that the contract provides a fixed price for the length of the contract? And I know there are variables depending on the throughput, but can you confirm that?
Yes, Representative Galvin through the chair, Adam Prestidge. I'll make two points, just kind of procedurally. One, we haven't yet executed the contract, the full contract with NSTAR. I believe that the president of NSTAR, John Sims, represented that we are very, very close to executing that, and I do agree with that. We've been negotiating and now for 9 months. It's a serious, fully fleshed out, detailed contract, and I think we are extremely close to having that executed. The second procedural point, again, a reminder, that will then be submitted to the RCA in a public review process, and so that will have a very high level of transparency. Substantively speaking, I agree with what was presented. It's a fixed price gas contract. It increases with inflation, with inflation-linked price increase, as any commodity contract would. And the only other distinction in terms of it being fixed price is that this contract has the unique and compelling opportunity for that price to actually go down very dramatically. And so that's the end goal, is that as volumes of gas increase on the pipeline, that price of gas drops down more than to less than 1/3 of the original price, which is really an outstanding feature that doesn't exist with any of the energy supply for Alaska.
Again, and thank you, Dean, for putting that plug in there. The $16 is NSTAR's price. That's not your price. That's not whoever NSTAR's customers are, right? They're going to tack on, I think John Sims said, another $2 or $3 to the price. I think it was $2. Then if it goes to HEA or your municipalities, then they might have their own charges that they add to it. So 16 is the floor in that conversation, right? So it ends up being more. But what Adam Prestidge is reiterating here that we learned last night or relearned last night is that the pipeline export project, that part of the project has the capacity to drop the price down, because your overseas buyers are going to be paying around $10 an MCF. When we're paying 16 for just the pipe or NSTAR is, as a direct customer of Glenfarne, contractual customer of Glenfarne, they're paying 16. Well, once we start doing the higher throughput and selling, exporting the gas, that $16 drops to somewhere around $10. Except we don't have to pay, the in-state rate doesn't have to pay the $10, whatever that $9 or $10 number ends up being. We don't have to pay that, because that includes your shipping cost and your gasification or liquefaction cost. It's already a gas. So when the gas gets to Nikiski, they got to turn it into a liquid, because it needs to be transported as a liquid, and then it gets loaded on a boat and shipped to Asia. That additional cost is not what we have to pay for. So that's how you can drop the cost from that $10 range to the $5 or $6 range. That's how we end up with cheaper gas here in the state. You cannot get the same price. You cannot, the economics do not work. There isn't a plan. There isn't a way to have that kind of price of gas come from Cook Inlet. It's never going to happen. It is impossible for that to happen. Likewise, you're never going to see that same price come from imported LNG. Excuse me. You're never going to see that. Even with a long-term contract, it's going to be more than that. So this is the only way. It's the only way that you get low-cost gas from the North Slope, is to have that export facility. So hopefully we get some. So we'll hear some further details on the difference between project phase 1 and phase 2 here during this meeting, and understand whether we're just going to get stuck with phase 1.
Thank you. I have a couple of follow-ups.
Sure. Representative Galvin.
Thank you. Appreciate hearing that once again from another voice. And I think it's so important for Alaskans to understand that what we're coming into likely is it is a higher rate than we are paying presently. But from what I understood yesterday, given the numbers, it would be less than the import rate. And so as we tackle this problem, I'm trying to make sure that we understand and make our constituents well aware of what's happening here. The follow-up question I have two, but one is, given that the gas buyers, so Alaska ratepayers in this case, are not bearing the risks of cost overruns, this is in phase one, and low throughput, can you describe who will bear the risk?
Mr. Prestige?
Sure, that's ultimately, Representative Galvin through the chair, that risk of cost overruns is ultimately borne by the developer, that's Glenfarne, and by the equity investors that come into the project. And so that's why it is imperative on us to make sure that we are setting up the construction program, the engineering, the cost estimates that go into the project as thoughtful and as detailed and as reliable as we can, because ultimately it is the equity investors in the project that bear those cost overruns.
Okay, if I guess my position here is going to remind us about how you become an equity investor. Adam Prestige here, that's having the conversation, indicated or pointed out, reminded us that the state of Alaska is equity owner in the project. Okay. 8-Star Alaska, 25% ownership is the state, 75% ownership is Glenfarne. Okay. Right now, that doesn't mean anything other than on paper, you've got two different owners. What Adam's saying is there will come a point in time after FID that the owners are going to have to capitalize the project. So your equity owners are the state of Alaska and Glenfarne. Glenfarne's going to go out and find a bunch of financing. They're going to bring their money to the table. The state of Alaska is going to do not of that. What are we going to do? What do you think the legislature is capable of doing? Right? They're going to take money out of the earnings reserve account, out of the permanent fund, and apply it to this pipeline so that they can be equity owners. Okay. Well, there might be some upside to that. If you put in, then you get out, right? You're part of that equity ownership. But it also means that if there is a cost overrun, you're on the hook. And if there's another capital call that says, hey, we know you put in $10 billion. Well, for this project, for the pipeline portion of this, it would be smaller than that. We know you put in $1 billion, but we've had a cost overrun. We need another $500 million, or we need another $1 billion. Whatever the dollar, that's what the equity investors would then have to cough that up. That's going to be a problem for the state of Alaska. So I think that we're going to have a major challenge. We being Alaskans, we being the legislature, is going to have a major challenge maintaining that equity position, because I mean, we have a hard time balancing our budgets because we say that we're hurting for money. So allocating or appropriating, I guess it would be appropriating a bunch of money from one of our savings accounts to this project seems like it would not have 21 and 11 votes to have happen. That would be my prediction, especially when that vote then incurs the wrath of the people when there is a cost overrun and the state is on the hook for an additional sum. It's just, I don't see that that's going to happen in the legislature. So at the end of the day, whoever does cough up money to maintain equity position in the project, those are going to be the owners that will bear the cost of overruns and the benefit of ownership over time, right? So doubt that's going to be the state, and I'm okay with that personally. I would rather not have the state involved. Just let it be a private concern and get your royalties, get your taxes, and leave it at that. We don't need the state mucking around with its 25% ownership of the project or of the operation once it's done. Just stay the heck out of it and stay away. Anyway, that's my soapbox and my thinking on this.
Follow-up?
So in addition to that, it's in Alaska's best interest as well for you to be successful. And I guess more importantly, for us to get the throughput up to the maximum allowable, or up to 500 at least, I understand is what would help us start receiving the lower rates. Can you speak to anything that would help us better know the timing of how long we might foresee these prices? And I think it may be $16 plus around $3.50, which is substantial. It's more than twice what we have now. So, or for those of us in Anchorage, that is. Can you give us a sense of timing for how long we might be expecting to have that price range as we're waiting for the export to begin?
Sure. Representative Galvin through the chair. One point I'll clarify is that as we look at this pricing, the way the contract will work is that the more volume comes on, and I agree with exactly what you've said. One of the reasons why we have set up the alternative volumetric tax in this way is because it does create what we think is a very strong alignment of interest, that the more tax we can flow on the more gas that we can flow on this pipeline, the more tax that's generated for the state through the form of the alternative volumetric tax, and the lower the gas price for Alaskans. And so there are multiple benefits to a greater utilization of this gas pipeline. Our goal, the way we are setting up the schedule for the project, is to first FID the pipeline, which has a approximately 3-year construction schedule, and then to FID the LNG export facility within 9 to 12 months after that. And it's really the FID of the LNG export facility that triggers the ability to reduce those gas prices. So if we do have the LNG export facility coming online within a year or two after the pipeline, that's kind of the maximum window for Alaskans to be paying that increased price. And you did identify that number would be twice what South Central Alaska is paying right now. I think what South Central Alaska is paying right now has a limited window of availability, as producers are charging more coming out of the Cook Inlet, and as LNG imports are significantly higher than today's Cook Inlet prices.
Frank, get to your question, then I'll get to the others here. You say the greater the tax, the lower the cost of gas. No, that's not exactly accurate. I think what he's saying is the incentives matter. The more gas that you have flowing through the pipeline, the more tax that you have. The cost of gas, or the price of gas, is going to be fixed. So even your overseas buyers are going to have long-term contracts that'll leave the price fixed, right? In state, we're going to have the same thing, long-term contracts that keep the price stable at a certain price, so that the project can be financed and know what the costs are going to be. But with regard to the tax revenue, you most certainly can have the costs stay the same, but the revenue goes up because you have greater throughput. More gas being sold means more taxes being paid, and that's how you can have more revenue. Interesting thought. Unions should throw in their money, and they can stand to have great gains. I think another aspect of union ownership of this, right, from a equity position, is that unions, at least those unions, would be incentivized to have their workers not have cost overruns. I think it's a good position to be in, because if the union has to cough up additional funds to cover the cost overruns that their employees were responsible for, that's going to be that's a tough meeting to have at the union hall, isn't it? We're supposed to be making money on this, and you all are dragging your feet. Get back to work. I'm kidding, but I think that is a proper incentive for the unions or any companies that are contractors for that matter, right? If they want to buy in and be an equity investor in the project, they've got some skin in the game. There's a motivation there to make sure that we don't have cost overruns, because then we're going to have to take a piece of it. And that hurts the bottom line. So not a bad idea on first blush here. Thanks, Frank. Good suggestion. Craig's asking about windmills and pixie dust. Yeah, we're trying to stay away from windmills and pixie dust. Not going to pay the Jones Act tax. I'm not exactly sure what you're meaning by that. There, Frank. Deshana asks, you had thrown out the idea of the legislature pulling things away from the RCA, but sounds like it has to go that direction. And is that a good thing? Or that is a good thing, right? I don't know that that's a good thing, but I think the legislatures, I would put act on the pipeline tax bill on one plate, and I would say find a solution or some kind of modification or reform of the RCA on another plate. And the legislature only has one plate right now. They're not going to be able to take up or entertain any kind of concept of adjusting the RCA at this point, unless it's just to carve out the RCA's responsibility. So if they are going to say the RCA doesn't have jurisdiction over this, then it isn't really dealing with how the RCA works per se, or reordering or eliminating or that type of thing. It would just be kind of fencing off this particular project from the RCA scrutiny. I don't know whether, and I'm thinking about this as to whether that violates a single subject rule, because that would be modification of the RCA as opposed to a tax bill. Maybe you can't do that. But I mean, if it was something that would benefit the project, the governor may be amenable to adding that to the call, adding that kind of a bill to the call if it was necessary. So I just think that if the RCA is the one that's going to be the potential bottleneck here with regard to price, again, this is the $16 it won't be the $16 that Glenfarne is charging Instar. It is the price that Instar is going to charge the customer, you or the utilities, right? So it's 16 plus whatever Instar's profit is, and plus the cost and all and whatever, right? So that number is the one that the RCA will actually. So if we're paying 16 now and the RCA already said yes to that, then what do they say if it's 20 or 22, $24? Do they say yes to that, or do they say no? And if they say no, then that kind of hurts the whole project, because now you don't have Instar can't receive the gas from the project because they don't have any customers to sell it to. They've been regulated out of selling gas from the pipeline. I think there's risk there that you could probably just do away with that risk by saying the legislature is going to speak on behalf of the RCA. We created the RCA. We don't need your assistance in this manner. We're going to approve Glenfarne's contract and take it out of the purview of the RCA. I think it would be cleaner. It would just remove that element of the process here and make it a simpler process. And I don't know that the RCA would have any beef. I mean, they've got a lot of work as it is right now, and you take this big, huge project off their plate, and they probably thank you for it. Anyway, so that's how I'd answer that question. I don't know whether they have the bandwidth to, but if it benefits the project, they probably could. All right.
Thank you for that thorough answer. I appreciate it very much. And I have a whole nother question. We understand that Glenfarne is reluctant to publicly reveal the current cost estimate for phase one, or your estimate, that is. For me, the reason the current cost estimate is relevant to my decision has two separate components, one of which was mostly addressed yesterday by Instar and confirmed by you. If our decision is made on a cost expectation proves to be too low, we ran the risk that the cost of gas would be much higher than was modeled. And then that risk is resolved through the fixed price. I really appreciate that through NSTAR, at least for us. I know that I assume you're going to be working with other utilities as well, or other
Correct.
folks who are selling. Okay. The other concern is that if the cost estimation we use to model project economics proves to be too high, and this is not something we've talked about very much, and I'll note that we will shortly hear from our Department of Revenue, who I believe are using the 16.6 billion estimated phase one price. But if that proves to be too high, then we could be accused as legislators in future years of providing tax relief that proved to be too generous. To provide some assurance to us that we aren't making an uninformed decision, can you at least verify that the current cost estimate is no higher than, say, 15 billion or 16 billion or some number? Does that make sense?
Undoubtedly, in the future, somebody is going to make the argument that says, well, you could have squeezed more out of that turnip. Like, you could have stood your ground. And if the tax is a 6-cent tax, you could have get a 7 or an 8 or a 9-cent tax. I mean, somebody is always going to make that argument. I suppose that if the cost of the project goes up and now in hindsight, it's like, okay, well, we should have done something different, right? But the project is moving forward at that point. You can cry over spilt milk, but at that point, you've solved one of the problems that we have facing our people right now, which is you don't have an alternative to cooking the gas running out. You don't have an alternative. You don't have a coal plant permitted and ready to go. You don't have a hydro plant permitted and ready to go. You don't have any of that. There's no alternative to deal with this impending gas shortage, except for this permitted project that could get started as soon as the legislature makes the deal. So who cares whether the project is more expensive and we look at it in hindsight and say we could have got more out of it? If you're getting gas at all out of the pipeline, Alaskans, then you're benefiting from it. It doesn't matter how much additional tax you kind of squeezed out of it. The alternative at this point in time is you stand your ground and claim you need more money. The project doesn't get built. And Adam's going to talk about this, is the challenges for why the price remains in the control of the developer. And that's exactly where, if we want low cost gas, which is what this committee is, or at least Representative Galvin's questions have been focused on, is how do we make sure that we keep a lid on, or a pressure to keep the price down? If you want that, then you want Glenfarne to be the controller of when that price conversation happens, because they are talking with contractors that could jack their price up. They're talking with other entities that could be like, no, we want more money for our gas, or we want a lower cost for gas, if you're talking about the buyers and the sellers, right? So the cost of the project that's part of the equation. So if you want low cost gas, let the developer keep the price conversation in their pocket and bring it out when it's necessary for them to bring it out. They're the ones that are trying to keep a lid on the cost of the project. You hired them. Remember this. You hired Glenfarne.
Representative Galvin, through the chair, this is Adam Preston responding. There's been a lot of discussion around the cost of this project and and how we disclose the cost of this project. Mm-hmm. I can tell you from the Glenfarne perspective, that's been a true challenge for us, because we want to be as transparent and as open with the legislature as we possibly can be. We have at the same time explained that the big challenge here is that as we are developing this project, we're negotiating with literally dozens of counterparties. And so that's people selling gas, people buying gas, parties buying LNG, contractors, banks, lenders, et cetera. And that's one of the challenges that we have to face when we're balancing disclosing the project cost. What I can say is you've got the DOR model. We've spent time with DOR model. We spent time with DOR, and we have seen the assumptions and that have gone into it. What we can say is we think that it is a reasonably presented model. There's a historical cost buildup that goes into that has gone into the cost that is presented today, and by that I mean there have been estimates given over at various times over the last 10 to 15 years, and you can kind of see how those costs have increased with inflation. And so those inflation adjustments, I think, are a reasonable representation. And so, really at this point, that's the most that we can say about the project costs. We've offered to sign NDAs or do executive sessions, but it's, frankly, it's been a challenge for us to be able to present this in the project costs in a way that give you adequate comfort, but also protect the integrity of the project. And really, our recommendation is to continue to work with the DOR, recognizing that those prices are within a reasonable ballpark of what we expect the project to be.
Okay, I heard reasonable ballpark. That helps. I appreciate that. And so we'll keep working with our Mr. Stickle. And now I'm hearing from the Senate that the current modeling is at 11.6, and I had heard directly from Mr. Stickle 16.6. So that's a difference roughly of $5 billion. So I just want to put that also on the record that is the challenge that we're working with too. And, we're trying to do our best to follow what we know is our job here. So I think, Co-Chair Foster, I think that's all I have. Mr. Prestige, thank you. If you'd like to give us more comments on that variability, I'm happy to hear it. And I do appreciate all that you're doing there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Galvin. Through the chair, I'll just respond. I'm not familiar with the 11.6 number that you quote, so I can give that much input.
Thank you.
Okay, next up I have Representative Bynum and then Allard. Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Through the chair, I just wanted to get some clarity. I know when Representative Stapp was asking questions, he was talking about sections of the bill that might be problematic to the developer. And I heard the comment response of basically saying that he felt like that the problematic sections of the bill were resolved on the floor during our amendments. The bill we had on the floor was SB 180. The bill we have in front of us is 381. And then there was also a bill provided by the governor, a new bill 2001. So when I'm hearing a response that says sections of the bill were resolved in reference to actions that were taken on the floor, those actions aren't currently in front of us. SB 180 died on the floor. So I'm not exactly sure where we're at when we're talking about problematic sections of the bill. So I just wanted clarity about which bill we're talking about when we say that those potential issues with the developer have been resolved.
Mr. Prestige.
Thank you, Representative Bynum, through the chair. I apologize. I was having a lot of audio issues during the time that Representative Stapp was speaking. So I've gotten more clear on that. And so yes, we're speaking about House Bill 381 version T, and the big fundamental issues in that remain the level of the alternative volumetric tax, the ability for municipalities to either opt in or opt out of the tax, and then the ability for municipalities to take equity in exchange. Actually, if those remain the primary issues, as kind of secondary issues that do persist in House Bill 381, one we had previously put forward, or we had been supportive of structure that abated the tax for a period of time after the commencement of construction of operations of the pipeline. That allowed a period of a number of years where the gas was flowing exclusively to Alaskans, where there would not be a tax charge, because that would be a direct charge on Alaskan raters. And that would be an abatement that would terminate at the earlier of 5 years, or 500 million cubic feet per day flowing of gas. So if we ever trigger into phase 2, where we're exporting LNG, during that first 5 years, then the abatement would release. And so that's another critical component here. I'd say there are a few other smaller issues. We could identify for the legislature, but really in terms of kind of the big fundamental issues, those are the primary ones.
Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Through the chair, I also, we went through several of these meetings where we've had conversations with the developer, we've had Department of Revenue here, and we've also talked a lot about affordability of the project. And I'm just trying to get a better understanding of when I hear us talking about needing to use the ATV model for instead of mill rate against property. I understand, that we need to make sure that the project is affordable and that we can get investment in the project. But we've got a lot of different options that have been in front of us. And I look at these heat maps and we're talking about gas ranging from $7 to $20 MCF. And we're having this big debate about 6 cents on the project. So as an example, when we look at some of the slides, and I'm sure we're going to get more depth on it, but we keep talking about making the project affordable, and we're talking about 6 cents MCF. Yet when we talk about purchasing gas from the upstream developers in the field, we're talking 50-cent swings in prices, and we're talking about export pricing of multiple dollars difference, and delivery of gas at $16 to Anchorage residents or connected system residents. And so I'm just finding it really challenging to get my head wrapped around this idea that the 0.06 is what's making and breaking this project. It's less than 1% of the overall gas at $7.50. So getting better explanations when we get a little further along will be helpful. And then one other thing I'd like to be able to address is this debate that's been ongoing about property tax versus ATV. And if that is an opportunity or an option that can make the project still work. And if so, I'd like to have a better understanding of what that is.
Mr. Prestige.
Thank you, Representative Bynum.
So I'll give it a chance to answer here. Here's the way I look at this from my perspective. If you think 6 cents is wrong and you can squeeze 7 or 8 or 9 or make it an even 10, then go ahead and provide the committee with an amendment to the bill and ask the legislature to stand on that. And y'all can stand on 6 cents is not enough. It's giving it away, whatever justification you want to come up with, and see if the project moves forward. If it moves forward with 10, then you made a good call. From the state's perspective, you made a good call. The cost of gas will be greater, maybe negligible, the difference between 6 cents and 10 cents. Maybe it doesn't add a tremendous amount to each one of our bills, but it will cause our bill to go up just an amount. I don't know what amount it would be. Might also cause the project to not go forward. And then Representative Bynum, because this is your idea, you can own it. It was your amendment. The rest of the legislature can co-own it because they decided to move off of the 6 cents and say that it's more important for us to get more money from this project than it is to risk closing the project or preventing the project from being built. Okay. So that's the decision, right? Take care of business or get off the pot. Let's get the bill passed. Put it at whatever language you think it needs to be in it. How many times do we have to ask the same question and have the same conversation about this, right? You make a decision. What do you want? You want a pipeline? You want taxes? Figure out what you're okay to live with and put it forward and see if it works. We're going to hold you accountable either way.
On the alternative volumetric tax versus property tax, I've talked a little bit about how the volumetric tax aligns the project, the developer, and the state to have more volume flow on the project. Another benefit is that it just creates a level of certainty and predictability for the project and for the state. One of the challenges that we've seen persisting on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline has been decades of litigation about the value of that property. And that's a real challenge for any project. And recognizing that if we were to set a property tax now, that could potentially result in, year after year of litigation about what is the value of that property. And so one of the primary goals of the alternative volumetric tax is to create a pretty simple framework to calculate how much tax is owed on this project for the entire period of time that the AVT is in place. And so that's one of the goals here. You're right. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's tax and it's a cost of the project. There are many different ways that you could structure that. However, we believe that this continues to be the best structure for the project.
Perfect. Thank you. And through the chair, as a quick follow-up, I think we've seen a lot of numbers. We've talked a lot about the economics of the project, different phases of the project, and ultimately what's in front of us is a property tax bill or an abatement bill, and what mechanism we're going to be putting out there for you guys to make sure that we're getting a project moving forward. And so, I mean, ultimately what this boils down is this question of whether or not we're using an AVT and what is that rate versus a property tax. And I fully understand the potential legal ramifications of a property tax or difficulty of that long term, and trying to fix it into something that's a known quantity with flows. But I don't feel like that we have had, and I might just be missing it, I don't feel like that we've actually had a really clear conversation around this ATV rate versus the property tax, and a clear connection between the two and the assumptions that go into that. Now, we go in and we look at the heat tables, we talk about all the other economics of the project, coming up with final numbers, but we really haven't, at least to my satisfaction, really talked about that component, because that's what we're really dealing with here in the bill. We've gotten a great background on project development and what it is you're trying to do, but I don't feel like that we've actually had a really good conversation about narrowing in on what this ATV number actually should be and how does it directly compare to property tax for the assets that are going to be, whether it's the treatment facility or liquefaction or the line itself, and getting a better understanding of the actual implications of investability into the project due to that.
I find it interesting that so this meeting is occurring at 2 p.m. today, right? And Senate Finance occurred at 9 a.m. Let me. I think that's correct. Senate Finance was at 9 a.m. Should have been. I didn't check the time. I've got it queued up here in case we want to watch it. But Senate Finance was pretty skeptical today. They brought in a company called Pegasus Global, and we've seen Pegasus Global come in and advise Senate Resources. And I suspect that Pegasus Global has either been put in a hard position or is normally a hatchet organization, a hatchet company to come in and tear things apart, or at least create doubt, because that's exactly what Senate Resources did today, was just create doubt about whether this project is even feasible. Okay. You've got the developer that's on the big screen here in House Finance saying it is feasible. We just need this thing to this tax regime to change, and then we can move forward. And then you've got a Senate Finance Committee that is balking at, well, this project's not even financeable. It's not even, like, the people in Senate Finance know better than Glenfarne, than the people who are going to build it. Jeremy Bynum, Representative Bynum, is showing a little bit of skepticism here with regard to switching from a property tax to a volumetric tax. And I'm not sure what the confusion is. It has always been described as eliminating the property tax, instituting the volumetric tax, and the amount of the volumetric tax would be equal to a 2 mil property tax. I guess maybe I'm just too trusting or whatever. Maybe there's some additional details that are necessary that I haven't seen. But from a big picture perspective and from a policy perspective, you're either going to have a property tax, and we all know what a property tax is, or you're going to have a volumetric tax, which is just a throughput or consumption tax. You put 1 unit through, you get taxed on 1 unit. You put 10 units through, you get taxed on 10 units. You get more money if you get taxed on 10 units, or the state makes more money if you have 10 units go through than you do with one. So I'm not sure what additional I need to hear to understand why moving away from a property tax to a volumetric tax is necessary. Like, and that it makes good sense for a project like this. At the same time that TAPS is going through its own litigation problems right now as we speak, highlighting Glenfarne's point that this is exactly what we're going to have to deal with, and it just adds cost and headache going forward in perpetuity for as long as the pipeline exists. Anyway, let's see what Adam Prestige has to say.
Chair Foster, may I respond?
Mr. Prestige.
Yeah, thank you. Representative Bynum, thank you for that. What I want to remind the committee is that the idea of 6 cents as an AVT, you can trace that back to when it was first presented. There was a lot of discussion around taking the project from 20 mils of property tax to 2 mils. And 2 mils was regarded as being more in line with kind of industry standard, or the tax rate that is proposed by that's applied to other projects. And obviously, there's been a lot of discussion. I'm not the one to represent here what the tax rate is for every project around the world or for every jurisdiction, but we were supportive of that based on input from a lot of different third parties. And so 6 cents to 2 mils isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison, because obviously it goes into what is the value of the project and how is it valued. But what I will say is we think it started with that basis as a close comparison. We've moved to something closer to 9 cents, and so that's gone up. And one of the other benefits for the AVT as opposed to a property tax is that the AVT increases each year with an inflation linkage, and so that's a feature that doesn't exist with the current property tax structure. And so really we see this as a tax rate that is I guess competitive or beneficial to the state as an alternative to 2 or even 3 mils applied to the property as a property tax.
Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve my questions until we get later in the slides, or I'm sorry, until we get a little bit later on in the conversation here, because I do have some other follow-up questions. Thank you.
Okay. Frank, you make an excellent point, and it is easy to overlook this. Frank says any local government should be acting in the best interest of the property owners. We elected our government at the local level, at the state level. We elected them. They're supposed to be representing for our interests. Local communities will benefit more with no tax to the gas line. Why is that? Because the tax gets passed on to the customer, to the consumer. So you, as the property owner, will pay the tax one way or the other. You will pay it. So as the government says, well, we need X number more dollars to deal with the issues that we have with the pipeline. Okay. So we're going to raise sales tax or some other tax other than the property tax on the pipeline. Somebody's going to pay it. If you raise the cost of the pipeline through the increasing the tax rate, whether it's a property tax or a volumetric tax, that raises the price of the gas that comes to your house. So you as the consumer end up paying it anyway. It's just kind of a hidden tax because you're not seeing it all the time. So this goes back to the purpose of representative government is not to take care of government. The purpose of representative government is to take care of people and people's interests. That costs money, so we need to have a conversation about how we finance it, right? How we finance our government, how we pay for our government. In this regard, it is better for us to have conversations. It is better for Alaskans to have conversations about how to pay for our state government, how to pay for our local government with another means than adding costs to the project that would then ultimately increase the cost of energy to us. We want to keep the cost of energy down because that is an input to our daily lives. It is an input to business activity. We want, as a business owner, we want to keep our business, our cost inputs to the business as low as possible. We want to have a conversation about spending and taxation and how to pay for things. Well, then let's have that conversation with our representative government. There are mechanisms for us to chip in more if we need to. That conversation can be had, but let's get the pipeline built and get the lowest cost energy possible going forward and not burden the project with additional taxation, because we just can't get over this notion that the maximum benefit equals revenue to the state. Maximum benefit for the people who created the state in the first place is low cost energy. Taxes be damned. We can figure that out in some other means, some other way.
Okay, I've got Representative Allard, Jimmy, and Hannon. Representative Allard.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Adam, thank you for being here. This is Jamie. So I have kind of been getting a little bit of questions in regarding the capital costs. And I don't see that we actually have a more of a solid number. And I'm thinking the project's going to predict closer to 60 billion. Is there anything else you can share with Alaskans in reference to the capital costs?
I think this was asked and answered already.
Representative Allard, through the chair, what I'll say is, again, to reiterate, we've endeavored to share as much as we can. It's been a real challenge for us for the reasons I articulated. What I can say is that if I know DOR is presenting, we've gone through the numbers with DOR, and we think that they are reflective of kind of the ballpark range that this project estimates exist in, and really that's kind of where we would recommend that the committee would put its focus.
Representative Allard.
So I didn't really get an answer. And I'm just going to ask you flat out. We're on public record. What do you want me to tell my constituents? Because we're not getting an answer. I'm getting inundated. This is a big deal to a lot of Alaskans. You got to give me something else. Are you saying you're not going to give me anything else?
Representative Allard, at this time, we can't disclose what the full project estimate is, what the full project capital cost is. It's still, at the end of the day, it remains a project being developed by a developer that is negotiating with a number of different counterparties, and there's a kind of a foreseeable possible range of what this project could cost, and that's been discussed in this forum and others by DOR and others, and the possible tax impact and the range of tax generated by that is associated with that range. But it's not possible for me as a developer to come sit in front of the committee and say the full project cost is going to be X. It's just not something we're able to do.
Nobody at this table puts together multi-billion-dollar projects. Nobody at this table has any experience or experience is the best word. They have no frame of reference to argue with this developer as to why he's wrong. They've got no frame of reference. They just don't like his answer. If they were developing large projects, then they would completely understand why the developer is the one that wants to keep that price as close to his vest as possible. And if they were thinking about it, if they understood that, then they would want him to keep that price as close to his vest as possible. They would not want him to disclose it. And if there are Alaskans out there that are in the same boat, they should also, if they're wanting low-cost gas, they don't want the price disclosed right now. It's not about how much taxes we can get. We need a dang pipeline and we need gas flowing through it. I'll just say this. This is what absolutely frustrates me. This conversation would be significantly different if, make myself bigger here so you can see my eyes. This conversation would be significantly different if the state of Alaska had a property tax or an income tax. I'm sorry, back up. I misspoke. This conversation would be significantly different if the state of Alaska had a income tax or a sales tax. Guess property tax might also, but I'm not even going there. I don't want an income tax. I have been a proponent of a sales tax, but here's the point that I'm getting at. These people at this table cannot have the conversation with Department of Revenue that says, if we build the pipeline, how are we going to get revenue? They can't ask that question because it's already asked and answered. It is a property tax. That's it. You don't have there's a bill here that's going to change it to a volumetric. That's it. That's all the conversation's going to be about regarding taxation for a project, because there isn't another way. The legislature doesn't have another means by which to collect revenue from the project or any activity from the project, meaning economic activity. So if you had an income tax or a sales tax in place statewide, then these legislators would go to the bean counters, the economists, and say, okay, well, we've got a property tax, we got a volumetric tax, we got an income tax, we got a sales tax. What is the projection for increased revenue amongst all of the various taxes that we have? And then it would be a conversation that these people would be having with regard to economic activity that is expected to be generated from gas going from $13 or $16 to $5. What is that going to do for our economy? What does it do for opportunity for growth, for jobs, for income for people? What does it do when you cut your energy costs in half or more? What does that do? It means that if the economy grows, then you have more people and they're paying an income tax and you have more revenue. It means you have more people and they're paying a sales tax and they generate more revenue to the state. The legislators don't think about that connection to the private economy. They only think about the connection to their budget, because there's no incentive, there's no structure that requires the legislator to think about it. And it would require an outside the box thinking. It would require a what if thinking. What if the economy was tied to the pipeline? Would that change our calculus for what the maximum benefit of the pipeline is? There's no connection. There's no connection to what the legislature, what the people sitting in that body right there, in that committee, they're the ones that do the budget every year. You're talking to the budgeters. They have no concern for whether the pipeline comes in and increases economic activity. There's absolutely, I could get blue in the face saying this. There's absolutely no connection and no concern for growth in the economy based on the decision they make with the pipeline, because it affects their job as divvying out money to special interests and government entities. It has no impact on it. If you had a sales tax in place and Dan Stickle would come in with his model, and he would say, well, we're going to project economic growth because of the low cost of gas. It's just a guess at this point, or here's the reasoning for why we think that we're going to see another $10 million or $100 million or whatever the dollar figure is. They would come in and project that for the legislators so that they would see that, we're going to get money from the property tax. And if we drop it from 20 mils to 2 mils, that'll see a reduction there. But we'll see an increase over here in the sales tax because it'll boost the economy. That conversation is not happening. There's no connection to the economy. This is the structural problem that we have in the state of Alaska. And everybody that sits back and says, I don't want to pay a tax. I don't want to pay a tax. I don't want to pay a tax. You're going to pay a tax. It's going to be in the form of higher gas. and you'll be able to like, oh yeah, well, at least I'm not paying a sales tax. At least I don't have an income tax. You got high cost gas. At least you don't have those taxes. I mean, this is the short-sightedness of Alaskans in general, and especially the people sitting at the table here. Government is going to get its money one way or the other. The better off we are as taxpayers is to make sure that that's as transparent as possible. As spread across our economy and as many taxpayers as possible. That's the best thing that we could do for ourselves. Not hiding the cost of government inside a tax line, inside a gas line, a tax line. That's funny. We call it a tax line now. That's what the legislature sees it as, is a tax line. Not hiding the cost inside the gas line, either in the form of a property tax or in the form of a volumetric tax that they want to jack up the price. I mean, that's what Representative Bynum is saying. We need more revenue. We don't know whether the equivalent of 2 mills is enough for a volumetric tax. If it's 6 cents, does it need to be 9? Does it need to be 10? We don't know what the price is. We got to talk about it. We have structural problems in the state of Alaska that a fiscal plan, a comprehensive approach to reforming our state government would benefit us in many different ways, not the least of which is this exact conversation right here. You would be better off to be having splitting the permanent fund earnings 50-50 and receiving a permanent fund check every year and paying a statewide sales tax. You would be better off. You would have more money in your pocket at the end of the year. And it would be transparent as to the cost of government. Right now, you have no idea what the cost of government is because you don't see that PFD check that doesn't come to you. You don't see the cost because the permanent fund earnings stay with the government and they don't come to you. These people here don't make decisions based on things that would improve your quality of life. Unless it is tied to a program that they are going to fund and control. You want to change that? Then you have to change the structure of where the money is coming from. And that's my rant.
One more follow-up, please.
Representative Ballard.
I get it, and that's why we're doing an estimate. And just so the public knows, can you please, again, tell me, because I can't remember, what the range that has been said in this committee many times. Can you tell me what that range is again?
Well, to my knowledge, the most recent estimate proposed by the Department of Revenue has been a number in the high 40 billions, 40s as the total construction cost for the project.
One more time. Sorry.
Representative Ballard.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. And then I guess my question would be, what if it goes up to 60 billion?
If it goes up to 60 billion, Representative Ballard, again, those are costs. That is a risk that's borne by the developer. So cost overruns can't be passed on to Alaskan ratepayers. And so the developer would either have to bear that cost or try to pass that along to LNG buyers in a very competitive LNG market.
Okay.
You know what I think? I think there's somebody out there that wants to see a gas line go through and is willing to pay up to 60 billion. And that's why Glenfarne can sit here and say, we'll take the burden. Because once the pipeline is under construction and the costs go up, if they've got somebody who's going to give them a loan and it's still economical, what nobody's going to care. I mean, yeah, people will point the finger, but nobody's going to care. The cost of gas doesn't go up because you've got a long-term contract. I think that's probably likely.
So just thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. So just to reiterate, you're saying that if there is a cost override, that those cost overrides will not be passed on to Alaskans. The developer and their investors would absorb those costs?
Correct.
That's what I need to know. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Perfect.
Okay.
Come on,
and
sister.
Next up, I've got Representative Jimmy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Thank you, Mr. Prestige, for being here. As I recall, last year, the industry came to testify and said they didn't need anything, along with that no tax breaks were needed. I just wanted to ask you what changed and why.
Representative Jenny, through the chair, the need for tax relief on this project is something that's been discussed going back many years prior to Glenfarne's involvement. When I first appeared in front of the legislature back in fall of 2025, this was identified as something that needed to be addressed. I think we go back to saying the project has very strong fundamentals. We're not asking for the state to pay any cash or make any further investment, but it has been identified for a number of years, including, Glenfarne's first appearance in front of any part of the legislature as an important part of the project. It's an assumption of some tax relief that has been embedded in every version of every model and every presentation that's gone forward on this project.
Was that an answer?
Mr. Prestige.
I'm sorry.
What?
That's. Nothing has changed on the project. If that's what you're asking.
Representative Jimmy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. So I asked you, you guys came and you guys said you guys needed no tax break. What changed? I don't feel like you answered that question. You guys said you didn't need anything. You didn't need no tax breaks. I asked you what changed, and I don't feel like I got an answer. Maybe if you could clarify a little bit more.
Sure. Apologies. I don't recall that anyone associated with the project ever said that we don't need any tax arrangement. When we've talked about not needing anything further from the state, historically, it is definitely being clear that there is not a need or request or an ask for additional cash investment by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and
this goes back to a committee meeting that that we reviewed from Senate Resources, where Senator Willikowski was asking a question of Adam Prestige at the tail end of a conversation, and asked him if there was anything else other than this bill that he needed, and his comment came back, "We don't need anything else from the legislature," and that is being taken out of context to say that Glenfarne didn't need anything and now they do. It is a sleight of hand, a half truth, a lie, in my opinion, to be putting this on Glenfarne and saying that one time they said they didn't need anything and we could go with a 20 mil tax, and now they're saying that we can't. It is a complete falsehood. It's a complete falsehood.
Line, I've got Representative Hannon, Stapp, Bynum. Representative Hannon.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Mr. Prestige, my questions are going to be very specific and about the two versions of the bill that we have before us and the volumetric tax. So I'm going to start with House Bill 381 on page 8, where it speaks to the volumetric tax. So this is the version T that came from House Resources. Top of page 8, the volumetric tax is 15 cents for each 1,000 cubic feet. My understanding is that in Resources, you or someone from Glenfarne was accepting of 12 cents per 1,000 cubic feet. And I know that 15 cents from your perspective is problematic, I think is the word you used in response to Representative Stapp today. But I'm trying to find out if 12 was an acceptable rate of that tax when it was in Resources.
Mr. Prestige.
Yeah, Representative Hand, through the chair, there was a version that was presented of this bill that had a volumetric tax on the pipeline at 6 cents and then 12 cents on both the LNG facility and the carbon capture gas treatment facility. and we would be supportive of a bill that had those levels.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Representative Hannon?
Thank you, Chair Foster. So those levels, that structure that you just specified, Mr. Prestige, is in House Bill 2001 on page 12. And that's why I'm trying to figure out if the 6 cents on the pipeline component exclusively is the problem, or whether there's room for that to be increased and match the other two components at 12 cents or not. Because we're down to making amendments for very specific things. So that's why I'm asking them in these narrowly constructed ways.
Representative Hannon, if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking, is it possible for the 6 cents on the pipeline itself to be increased?
Yes.
Well, to respond to that, I just remind any increase that we put on the pipeline or on any other component, whether it's taking part of the LNG or the gas treatment facility from 12 cents to something higher, we're just putting a greater cost on the project and making what is already a very large and historically challenging project more expensive to build. And the outlets for that additional cost are either to charge more for gas sales on domestic gas, especially if we're talking about pipeline only, or to basically find ways to that's really the outlet. That's really the outlet, is to charge more for the gas sold from the pipeline.
Representative Hannon?
And I guess, Jen, so my final question is to affirm that Glenfarne, if we use the volumetric tax structure that is in House Bill 2001 on page 12, where it is 6 cents on the pipeline, but 12 cents at the gas treatment and liquefaction, that's an acceptable tax structure to you, to have those three facilities taxed, broken out separately?
Representative, through the chair, yes, we'd be supportive of that. We think we can make the project work like that, and we also think that it reflects negotiation and collaboration with the municipalities at a level that is acceptable to the municipalities.
Okay, thank you, Chair Foster. Thank you, Mr. Prestige.
Okay. Next up, I have Representative Stapp, Bynum, and Galvin. Representative Stapp.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Can you guys hear me still?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Foster, through the chair to Mr. Prestige. Yeah, thanks again, Adam, for being here and answering our questions. So I have two quick ones. So an issue came up with the volumetric structure. I kind of look at it like a throughput tax. When I looked at international LNG project, it seemed very common to have that type of tax structure in place, although a little uncommon in the domestic United States. There was some dispute about that through Mr. Rice, who testified from the North Slope Borough. And I'm just curious if you want to weigh in on that. So is the volumetric structure or throughput-based structure, is that a common practice in these projects worldwide? Through the chair.
Representative Stapp, through the chair, Adam Prestige. Yes, we've seen the AVT, the alternative volumetric, or the throughput tax applied to other projects around the world. This isn't the novel idea that anyone at Glenfarne came up with, as an epiphany. I'll even recall that there have been times where a throughput tax has been proposed for taxing the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline, and so this isn't an issue that's been presented, at the first instance to Alaska even, and it's certainly a model of tax that's been applied to other projects around the world.
Thank you, Paul.
Representative Stapp.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Foster, the chair to Ms. Prestige. So the other issue, and thanks for clarifying that it's, I'm putting that on the record, that it's a very standard type of practice. So we were talking with revenue at their last presentation regarding what the difference between 6 cents, or maybe we wanted to do 5 cents volumetric, and if that would help the project. Our revenue didn't think it would be marginal, to be honest, but obviously, we want to try to give you guys the best tools in your tool belt to be able to finance and construct this transformative project for Alaska. So is 5 cents better than 6 cents, through the chair?
Representative Stapp, thanks for that question, through the chair. What I will say is that we spent a lot of time with the mayors coming up with the proposal and with the alternative volumetric tax. And 6 cents and 12 cents are the levels that we've worked on with the mayors as a concept. The municipal working group, as we established, was very supportive of the alternative volumetric tax and saw the benefits of the predictability and the way that it solved kind of litigation risks. And so the concept of alternative volumetric tax, we think reflects the alignment with the municipalities and with the mayors. And 6 cents was part of that agreement that we reached with that working group, and the 12 cents on the ancillary on the additional facilities. Obviously, if you reduce that tax further, if you go from 6 cents down to 5 cents, you're lowering the cost burden for the project. But we're not asking for that at this point because we don't think it's in line with what we've agreed to with the municipalities.
Okay, final follow-up.
Representative Stout.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Mr. Prestridge. Yeah, thanks again. I mean, I think it's important that the public know how much input and working with municipalities and stakeholders that you kind of got to arrive at the numbers that we have, and why that structure is important. Because again, this is a statewide project, and we want to make sure it has the best statewide benefit with all the stakeholder involvement. And I just want to applaud you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stapp. If I can respond, Chair Foster. Appreciate you saying that. Again, as I said at the outset of my remarks, we're very proud of the work and the collaboration with communities that's gone into this proposal. There's been some concern. I've certainly gotten plenty of questions of why wasn't the governor's bill presented earlier in the session. We spent a lot of time, week after week, meeting with the municipal working group, trying to make sure that we had aligned everything that was necessary for the communities to feel like they were getting the support and the economic deal that we need. That includes, again, a very thoughtful and detailed discussion on the Fairbanks spur line, incorporating that into the project. We heard loud and clear from the mayors that they wanted some offset, some compensation for impacts during construction. We added that in, and again, we're proud with the outcome of that municipal working group that's represented in this bill.
Okay, I think Representative Stapp, I think you're done with the question.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Appreciate the answer.
Okay, thanks. Next up, I have Representative Bynum and then Galvin.
Okay. Dean, you asked a question. When this bill moves out of committee to the floor, can the floor say we don't like what you recommend and we vote to change it to 6 cents? And the answer is absolutely yes. Not only that, but if this bill goes to the Senate, the Finance Committee in the Senate is going to do the same thing, or they have the power to do the same thing, is change it to whatever they want. So just because this committee decides one thing doesn't mean the whole body is going to. And that can work both ways. that can swing the other direction as well, and say they sit on 6 and the body says no, we're going to go to 7 or we're going to go to 10. It can work both ways.
Representative Bynum.
Oh, thank you, Co-Chair Foster. I just want to correct for the record. I may have used the term ATV earlier, and I meant AVT, or the alternative, an alternative to the property tax. So I just want to clarify that for that record. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Prestige, I think that's the conclusion of our questions, and we appreciate your being available. Do you have any concluding comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Bynum.
Thank you. If we're going to be done, I guess I do have a final question here. Two questions, actually. So one was that we've been hearing about the idea of the alternative volumetric tax being used as a more consistent way to mimic what we would be doing with assumed property taxes, and I believe that rate was 2 mils. And I was hoping that you guys might be able to provide to us or direct me to the specific evaluation that was done and the assumptions that were being used to point to how we get to from the 6-cent AVT to the 2 mil equivalent. So, I mean, obviously, assumed flows have to be there, assumed values within a ballpark have to be there, and then escalation over time. So I was hoping that you could either direct me to a previous slide. I mean, I've got hundreds of pages here from multiple presentations. And if that hasn't actually been done, that you guys would be able to provide that to the committee.
Okay. What's going on here? If you're going to compare a volumetric tax based on the volume of gas and a rate that is set that generates a dollar figure, then you got to know how much gas is flowing through the pipe, and you got to know what rate you're going to set it at. Okay, those are your factors. And with that, you can do math, and you can figure out what the end result is of how much revenue is going to be generated. If you want to compare that with it, which is what Representative Bynum is trying to compare that to, well, how did you come to the equivalency of this 6 cents is an equivalent to 2 mils? Okay, good question. So now, in order to do the same exact math equation, set the same math equation up with the 2 mil property tax, you have to know what the inputs, what the math equation is, right? So you got to know what property is being assessed for property value that goes in, that will be applied, that the 2 mil tax is applied to, and you got to know what the value is, because you already know what the 2 mil rate is. There's your rate. You got to know, we got to identify what the property is and how much the property is worth. Okay, so you've got Bynum, Allard, Galvin, Jimmy are all asking questions about the cost of the project. And this is Representative Bynum's way of getting to the cost of the project. So if the cost of the project, the cost of the pipe, in order to say that there's an equivalent revenue being generated from a 2 mil tax as there is a 6 cent volumetric tax, the math will tell you what the cost of the pipeline, the value of the pipeline is. So if Glenfarne will now share the cost of the pipeline, that's how they're going to compare the math so that the two are equivalent, okay, or roughly equivalent. Now, if the argument that's being played here is, well, the project is actually, it's not 10 billion, it's 12 billion, or it's 14 billion, okay? So the cost of the project doesn't change the cost of the math with the volumetric tax, because the same gas is going through it, whether it's a $10 billion project or whether it's a $12 billion project. But the cost, the revenue that would be generated based on the value, the assessed value of the project, if it were assessed at a higher value, would materially affect the 2 mil property tax revenue number. So if we can do the backwards math here and get at what Glenfarne is actually saying the pipeline is, it should equal what they've been saying it is. It's $10 billion or whatever that number is. Okay. But if the cost actually ends up being more, then you will come back with a conversation that says, well, we left a whole bunch of, you told us that the project was only going to be 10 billion and it ended up being 12 billion. And so the comparison between a 2 mil tax and a 6 cent tax is not comparative. It's not equivalent. We should have raised it to 7 cents or 8 cents or 10 cents because the cost of the project, the value of the project for the property tax assessment is actually greater. That's the angle that they're trying to get at here, is to justify raising the tax. Okay. All right. That's fine. That's what you want to do. Let's have that conversation. Nobody in Jeremy Bynum's district is going to pay the tax. Only the people that are sitting in potentially Frank Tomaszewski's district, Representative Galvin's district. Sorry, just drew a blank there. Anchorage district. Both of these gentlemen are Anchorage district. This is Valley and Eagle River. Shragi and why am I, I'm so sorry. Why am I drawing a blank on his name right at the moment? It'll come to me. Josephson. There you go. Those are all Anchorage. Those are all represent people who are going to be paying the higher cost of gas because you raised the tax. Jeremy Bynum, Representative Bynum, he didn't care. Raise the tax. He's not paying it. None of his constituents are paying it. Don't care if the change gets made and the project doesn't go forward because we're not benefiting from it. All right. So the ulterior motives here, the outside the project sphere is alive and well in the room. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day whether the legislature comes in 2020 hindsight and says, oh, we could have collected more revenue. We could have collected more revenue on this pipeline. You can always come in and change the volumetric tax later. You could. It would be going against what the whole point of having the volumetric tax set at the beginning and not changing it would. But you could come in and change it. You could raise taxes somewhere else to pay for the project. No, I'm sorry, pay for the expenses that you want to pay for government from. It doesn't have to be on this volumetric tax, right? You can look at it and say, well, we wanted the project. And so, yeah, we just didn't take as much taxes there. We'll have taxes. We'll take taxes somewhere else. Again, going back to the economy. If the economy grows, well, then there's more money to be had. And so we can tax something within the economy. If that's the driving force behind your question is we need more revenue. That's what Jeremy Bynum is getting at here with trying to get a backwards assessment on the comparison between the 2 mil and the 6 mil or 6 cents.
Certainly, Representative Bynum, Chair, that tie-in, and again, as I said a few minutes ago, it's not a perfect mathematical tie-in. It's a relative comparison between 2 mils and at the approximate DOR capital cost assessment of approximately 44 billion and 6 cents. What we have then discussed and worked with municipalities and other and this body has been to increase or to allow for an adjustment to that number to increase over time. So over 30 years, that number, that 6 cents escalates pretty significantly. And if you then move that to the 6 cents and the 12 cents combination, you start with a number that's closer to between 9 and 10 cents. And then that escalates with inflation over 30 years. And so that escalation with inflation doesn't exist with the current property tax. And so, you keep yourself on the right side of, or you keep the state whole, I guess, if you will, in terms of tax revenue. And we think keeps a comparison to the 2 mils, to the 2 mil concept. And again, that concept of 2 mils, that was reinforced by both Gas Strategies and Wood Mackenzie in presentations to the legislature as being a fair level of taxation.
Correct. And through the chair as a follow-up, I just would like to be able to see see what those assumptions are and how you're doing that. I mean, I understand the concept, but we've been talking around it, and I've heard exactly that. The 6 cents is about equivalent to 2 mils. But we really haven't put that on paper. We really haven't walked through it. And under what circumstances or scenarios those are. I mean, in-state phase 1 versus export, two very different things. 500, using a 500 number versus a 2,000 number for throughput, that all changes. 1% escalation per year, that happens through property taxes as well. So using a 1% to 2% based on CPI may not truly reflect the property tax equivalent evaluation, although there's some uncertainty with the property tax evaluation. So having all of that helps really inform our decision. And I think it really also leads to the question of how long do these measures stay in place? We're putting them in place now because we want certainty for investment purposes and then paying off debt. But at some point that debt's going to be paid off. And so having all those assumptions directly linked within reason to those numbers is very helpful for the committee. And if somebody else on the committee has that very crystal clear on what those assumptions are, I'll be happy to work with a committee member for that, but I'm very unclear on it. And so I think it'd be very helpful to at least have that information. And then I had a second question.
Okay, before you get to your second question, Jeremy Bynum, look, legislative finance has staff. They have economists that work for legislative finance committee. They're permanent employees. They're not political employees. They're not staff members for each one. They work for the committee. The division director, the director of finance, Alexi Painter, can put together the answers for what Jeremy Bynum wants. Meaning, this committee can do the work themselves and come to that answer. They don't need to poke a finger in the eye of the developer saying, you haven't given us this information and we need more information. You can go get it yourself. It's all, you just compare it because you know what the projected cost of the pipeline is for this project conversation. You've got all the inputs for the math equation. So you just have your staff put it together and then present it and discuss it. And if you want to run it by Glenfarne and say, hey, are we talking apples and apples here? This is what we think. Is this what you think? Do you agree with this? You can do your own legwork. Like, you can come up with the answers yourself. You don't have to be told. You don't have to force somebody else to do the work.
With regard to phase 1, phase 2, we obviously want to be in phase 2. I mean, we've had lots of discussions about whether or not, lots of discussions here in this committee. I've also been watching what's happening in the Senate Finance. Those questions have been asked over there about feasibility of breaking this up into 2 phases, going from final investment decision on phase 1. What does that look like for going to a final investment decision on phase 2? I was hoping for a little bit more clarity on, we get this bill done, we get the property taxes or alternative in place that's necessary to move to the next phase. Once we go FID on phase 1, we actually are ordering materials and starting construction. What is our anticipation for phase 2?
Mr. Prestige.
Yeah, Representative Bynum, through the chair. I'll first comment on your question about kind of some of the broad assumptions that go into this the calculation of the tax. One is we're talking about a tax of 6 or 12 cents per MCF that goes through the pipeline. And then when we look at kind of the holistic question of how much can this project generate for the state, we do that calculation by estimating the total throughput for the project, which is 3.5 billion cubic feet per day. And so the way to calculate that obviously is you would multiply that daily flow by the cents per unit, and that would give you the calculation for the tax that it would generate. In terms of kind of aligning this with repayment of debt, that's very important. What we'd like to achieve on this project is a debt term of 30 years, and we've talked about the need to have this bill not have an outside date or a sunset date prior to 30 years, so we can have that predictability. And again, having that kind of longer term mortgage, if you will, allows us to keep the cost, ultimately the cost of gas lower during phase 1. When we talk about phase 1 versus phase 2, this is what I'll remind is that this was a concept that was developed by the state as Glenfarne came into the project. And so the feedback historically from the market, both the finance market and the broader LNG market, was that taking this project on as one consolidated multi-phase project that FIDs at one time, or single phase project that FIDs at one time, was too difficult. And LNG buyers saw the risk of the pipeline that made the LNG unattractive. And really the feedback from the market was, if there was a pipeline already in place or in construction, then LNG buyers would feel more confident buying LNG from Alaska LNG. And that was one of the big driving factors of breaking this project into phases. It's also a driving factor just to reduce kind of the amount that would need to be financed at one time. And so each of these sub projects is meant to be more achievable than doing the project all at once. But the real value in doing phase one first is that it's going to deliver gas to Alaskans at a price that's better than any of the alternatives. And again, I would just refer back, don't take my word for it. This is analysis that's been done by NSTAR, that the price, the $16 price that we've agreed to with them, is lower than the alternatives of importing LNG over the same period of time by a pretty meaningful margin. And this, because we have the phase two element incorporated as well, this is the only way that Alaskans can reduce their cost of energy over a long period of time.
Representative Bynum?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Absolutely fully support the concept and why we're doing this. I think it's good for Alaska. It's good for the economy. It's good for growing our economy. So I'm a big support. I'm just trying to get down to the understanding of, before we push out a bill with long term implications, I want to understand exactly what it is that we're putting out as a product. So one of the concerns I have, that I do understand that we're talking about having an escalator in here. I believe we've had discussions that would range between 1% minimum to 2%. When I look at inflation, at least for Alaska, inflation over the last 30 years, we're at around 2.5% on average per year. So if we're locking this in at 2% maximum over the next 30 years, we are eroding the value of that tax, alternative tax to Alaska and the community. So I'm just wanting to understand, or I'd just like to get your thoughts, follow-up thoughts on how do we prevent that from happening? Is the 2% too low for a cap, and or would there be an opportunity for having reopening periods so that we could reevaluate that what that number should be based on the current real world market conditions?
Sure. Thank you, Representative Bynum. At the outset, I'll say that the inflation structure on that I described, the 1 to 2% with inflation within that number, is an outcome from the working group with the municipalities. And so that's something that was carefully discussed and I think agreed upon. Again, if you have, it provides a certainty for the state. You talk about kind of a historical average of 2.5% of escalation, but sometimes that's going to be less, sometimes it's going to be more. And putting this within a band of 1 to 2% creates an even more certain and forecastable revenue for the state in terms of tax revenues, and also cost for the project in terms of being able to model out what cost the project is going to have to bear.
Well, another way to address that is to control your spending to below inflation. And then you don't have to worry about your tax eroding or inflation eroding the tax value, because you don't need the tax. You don't need more money because you've controlled your spending. I mean, you could look at it both ways. Again, if we just set it as a known fixed cost escalator, you're going to be wrong. Whatever number you pick, you're going to be wrong, because you don't have any control over what inflation is going to be in the future. But at least you've got a number that people can plan on and move forward with. I really feel like we're bringing things up here just to bring things up and hear ourselves talk. Like, these are questions that you and your staff and conversations can get the answers to. You could even talk with Glenfarne and get the answers to these things without wasting committee time with this. These are not. I really think there's got to be some ulterior motives here with this line of questioning. And I see a similarity between Representative Bynum, who represents one half of Senator Stedman's district, and the line of questioning that's happening in Senate finances. I see a connection here of skepticism for this project. Out of one side of the mouth, we say, yeah, we want to see it. On the other side, we issue doubt. And it appears to be double-mindedness, right? Put the amendment forward and see where it goes, and then own it. That's what I say. Put up or shut up.
Thank you.
Okay, next up I've got Representative Galvin and then Josephson. Representative Galvin.
No, and I was going to address Frank's statement here. You can change a statute every session. I know that Glenfarne wants to think that they're going to get long-term predictability with what this legislature sets up as far as a tax. And maybe they just haven't been in the state long enough to know that this is not really a trustworthy organization, that any given year, the legislature could come back and change whatever they established in statute. There's nothing going to be that the courts are going to say, yeah, you agreed with Glenfarne in 2026. And so you can't change that until 2050. Like, the courts are not going to say that. The legislature has the ultimate authority over the statute. They have the ultimate authority over taxing structure and rate and everything with regarding to taxes. So setting it up in statute is only as good as the representatives that you send to the legislature. Every year they can come back and reassess this if they want to. Totally within their purview. And yes, that's what he means, Dean. They want to write into the process an agreement that they would come back every 10 years or every 5 years or every whatever time period and reevaluate whether the 6 cents is appropriate or whether it needs to be more. It's what they want. I mean, this is ridiculous because the legislature can do that anyway. They just choose next year to reevaluate it. They don't need an agreement with Glenfarne to do it.
Thank you. I do have one more question for you, Mr. Prestige, and it is related to the cost once again for phase 1. You had mentioned that we would do best working with the DOR estimate, and that I think we both appreciate each other's positioning around this. My question to you is, would you be comfortable saying that we're within 10 or 15% of the band, give or take? Does that make sense?
Representative Galvin, it does make sense. I can't give a comment here on that with that kind of specific numerical range.
Okie doke. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Josephson.
Mr. Chairman, actually, Representative Bynum got into it and noted that under current structure, there would be some reassessment, some appraisal of property. And so the current system also reflects some inflation adjustment. There was just a pretty significant adjustment on the pipeline, for example, through the State Assessment Review Board. So I just wanted to make that comment, but Representative Bynum did it, so I don't have a question.
Did we have another question? Representative Schrage?
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Foster. Thank you, Mr. Prestige, for being here. The question of costs and other confidential information keep coming up, and for good reason. Frankly, I think it's hard for us to navigate this process and to know that we're setting this up with a fair structure without having some of that information. But at the same time, I understand your need for confidentiality and discretion in terms of disclosure of those details. Previously in committee hearings, we've heard that in navigating that delicate balance for projects elsewhere in the world, that teams are set up that are able to be read into some of those confidential details. Do you have any advice for us as to how we might navigate that? One question I have is, are you able to, or have you already possibly disclosed some of that information to DOR and or DNR, just the administration generally? And are they possibly a conduit to share some of that information so that we can receive some feedback, maybe not with direct information, but at least through the administration, that we're within the realm of what is fair, for lack of a more specific term?
I sure hope Adam Prestige goes this direction. Who just asked the question was Representative Schrage. He's a co-chair of finance. He's a co-chairman. This committee can decide to go into executive session and ask those questions off the record to their heart's content. And Adam Preston just said, we will do that. This is the team. You don't need to set another team up. You have the team right here on this committee. It is your duty and your responsibility to act as a team, as a committee, to solve the problem at hand. So if you think that that's necessary, call yourself into executive session, have the conversation that you need to have with Glenfarne, and then come back and make a decision on the record. You won't be able to share the information that you talked about in the executive session, but you will have satisfied this requirement. And here's what I think is driving this. If you really, really boil this down, it's an election year, right? And you've got a lot of people who are in liberal districts or purple districts, and they're going to catch hell from the left who wants to see oil and gas development ended in this state. And they are frustrated that we're talking about a gas line instead of windmills, solar panels, and pixie dust. They're frustrated about that. And these people who are standing for re-election know that they're going to catch hell from constituents who really would prefer that they not be talking about a gas line. Ideologically, they would rather be saying we need to be shutting down oil and gas development on the North Slope, not building it up. And this is just building it up. That's what's driving the conversation here, is because they know damn well that somebody's going to come back to them on the left side of the argument and say, well, you just gave away the farm to that evil oil gas company. Totally ignorant to the fact that they are also wanting low-cost gas to heat their home. That they want low-cost electricity, and they're going to benefit from it. Complete disconnect from reality. But I think that's what's pushing many of these individuals sitting on the table, is this certain constituencies during this election year that are going to beat them up for giving away the taxes, for giving away the farm to that gas company. I think that's part of the challenge here that we're dealing with. Sucks that it's an election year and we're having to have this conversation.
Thank you, Representative Strage. Responding through the chair, certainly we would like to disclose as much as we can. And as I mentioned, this has been a real challenge for us. We've offered to enter into NDAs. We've offered to do executive sessions with legislators. We've offered to sign NDAs with third-party advisors to the legislature. So far, none of those have been acceptable to the legislature. And so we've really, tried to be creative about ways to provide this information in a way that still protects the project and ultimately protects the project costs. And that's certainly been a challenge for us. If there are ways for us to be able to do that in a way that don't involve, sharing our current estimates with everyone that we're negotiating with, we're open to it. We have shared information with DOR and DNR under levels of confidentiality that are inherent in how they operate. And so, again, providing information under NDA is something that we are, certainly willing to do and to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster.
Dean asks a question here. We'll address this. What would be Glenfarne's recourse should the state say, we're going to double your tax, to the point that Glenfarne is going to lose money? We'll see. Glenfarne's not going to lose money. Glenfarne loses money when they say no to the project and they lose what money they spent in feed. But Glenfarne's not losing money with a higher tax. That higher tax gets passed on to the customer. It is you and I that end up losing more money. It is the constituents of these folks here that live on the rail belt that are going to be losing more money. They're going to be paying more money in the form of higher cost gas. So what would Glenfarne do? They would say, well, the financiers won't finance the project at that higher tax. And so we are at an impasse. You want us to build the pipeline. You also want a tax rate that is not acceptable to the financiers, and you're not willing to finance the project yourself. So we're at an impasse. We are going to see our way out of this project. We're going to sell it to the lowest bidder. We're going to sell it to the highest bidder. I don't know. But that's what they do. I mean, if the financiers are not going to finance the project because of the economics, because of the tax and economics, then they either find different financiers or they go find a different project. That's the end. That's an end state for Glenfarne.
Thank you for that, Mr. Prestige. Appreciate your desire to find a way in which to make this work. Have you shared specific project cost estimates with DNR or DOR as of yet?
Representative Shruggy, we haven't given them kind of the exact output of our feed studies, but we have had discussions and given inputs to different assumptions in the DOR model.
Follow up again.
Representative Shruggy.
Thank you. And what prevents you from sharing that specific information with the administration at this point?
Again, I will say there is information that we have shared with the administration. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily all been reflected in the Department of Revenue model, but the big factor for us is ensuring that if we are going to present confidential information, that's not going to be made public at this point in time. So that's the big concern for us.
Follow up, if I may.
Representative Shruggy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. So really, it's just a hesitancy to share that information at this time. It's your unwillingness to share that information with the administration at this point. Is that accurate? I think that's what I heard.
Unwillingness, as it's just your prerogative as to whether you share it or not. Representative Shruggy does not have Representative Shruggy does not understand why Glenfarne would hold on to the cost estimate update until a later date, if ever. He does not understand. He looks at it as you're just choosing not to tell us. There's a whole lot of constituents out there. There's a whole lot of Alaskans. There's a whole lot of people who are saying the exact same thing. They're just greedy people. They just don't want to share the details. They just don't want to be transparent. And all of those people have no idea how to put a project together and to actually do business. They have no idea. A good question to ask Adam Prestige right now is, what is the downside to sharing information that you're keeping close to your chest? Help us understand why you're in this position. If it's not just purely greed and we're trying to pull one over the legislature, if it's not that, why is it that you feel like you need to keep this close to your chest? They've already said it. They've already indicated it. But if that's what helps your mental math, then ask that question. Why is it that you feel it's necessary? And then they will tell you that because Adam has already communicated this to them. The people who provide pipe are going to provide pipe under a contract for a certain price. The people who provide labor to help build the pipeline are going to provide that labor under contract at a certain price. All of those contracts and all of those prices are contingent upon the information that he's holding close to his chest. He's got tentative agreements with those people based on the information that is publicly available right now. Those companies are choosing to do business with Glenfarne, knowing full well that the feed data that Glenfarne may have more pertinent data or more up-to-date data, but they're choosing not to show it, to release it. Yet those companies are still indicating they're willing to sign contracts with Glenfarne. There is no problem in industry with what is happening here. The only problem is with the legislature who doesn't understand business, who doesn't understand how to put projects together and how to grow business. None of them have a business mindset. So ask the question. educate yourselves on why business does and acts this way. Why is Glenfarne feeling it's in their best interest? And I'm arguing it's in our best interest for Glenfarne to be behaving like this. As soon as you release that information, the contractors are like, hey, I want to renegotiate my contract. I want a bigger piece of the pie. And that means you and I pay more for gas because the project gets more expensive. These people do not understand that. They don't understand or they don't care. One of the two. If they've got dollar signs in their eyes and they are already spending the revenue that would be coming from this pipeline, and they go to bed thinking about, well, if we're just getting screwed. We need more revenue. And that's what the benefit of this pipeline is. We just need more revenue to the state. Look, we don't have enough money as it is. They're not thinking of it in the proper terms. They're not thinking of it in the proper light. You got to get the project built, financed and built before you get revenue. Half these people have already got it spent. They can think of the things that they need to spend it on. Education, number one. Remember, they already wrote it into one of the versions of the bill that a certain amount of this revenue is going to be designated to education, right? They're already spending it, and the pipeline hasn't even been built yet. That's what's going through their head.
Representative Shruggy, as I said, we have a willingness. We need to have confidentiality protection and have NDAs in place, and so far haven't been able to do that.
Including with the administration, you've been unable to sign NDAs or otherwise create that confidentiality assurance that you need. I know you listed off a number of examples with the legislature, but with the administration, have you been unable to secure NDAs?
Well, with respect to the DOR model itself, that's something that's made public and publicly reviewed and publicly presented, to this committee and others, and that's the issue with that form of communication specifically.
Dean, I love you, brother. Dean says Glenfarne needs to equate the pipeline, this conversation, to remodeling the kitchen for your wife. You may have real reason not to tell her how much money you paid for the counter. It's a perfect explanation. Somebody's going to demand you spend more on the sink, or we're going to get new cabinets out of this deal because you got a smoking deal on that. We're going to end up spending more. Perfect, Dean. Thank you. It was a great analogy. Man, what I wouldn't give for some finance members that at least attempt to think about business and how you make business decisions.
Okay.
So sorry. So we do have confidential projections with the administration. We've shared information with the administration that hasn't all shown up in the model that is then publicly shared.
That's fine for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Prestige, I don't see any further questions. Oh, Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Foster, through the chair. I've heard a lot about conversations about NDAs and being able to share information. I know that hasn't been something that I'm aware of that's been offered to this finance committee as a committee. Is that something that's being offered to individual legislators?
Representative Bynum, that is something that's been offered to different legislators at different times during the session, and we've been told, and I think it was something that's been discussed in front of Senate Resources Committee, and it's been made pretty clear that that's something that wouldn't be acceptable. It's not something that we have offered here to this committee specifically, but we would be willing to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't
I don't know whether it's helpful or hurtful, but in full transparency, if you're not aware, excuse me, back in 2023, maybe it was earlier than that, I can't remember. I was appointed by the speaker to be the legislature, one of the legislators assigned to the AGDC board to help report back to the legislature. So I attended AGDC board meetings as a legislator. So I don't have any boarding. I don't have any voting rights. I'm just there to participate and listen and learn and represent the legislature's interest and be able to report back to the legislature. Okay. And I did that for pretty much my entire term. Last couple of years of that term, I signed an NDA so that when I go to the meetings and I have the conversations with AGDC, I'm able to understand what is actually going on behind the scenes with whatever information that AGDC was able and willing to share with me. I understand the predicament that puts me in with a constituent that may say, hey, you represent me and you're not going to share information with me because you can't, because you signed an NDA. And that means you're not being transparent with me. I get that. I understand that that's a legitimate concern. All I can say is that I'm doing my best. I was doing my best to represent my constituents in actually knowing what the truth is. I care about knowing what the truth is. And I want that to guide the decisions that I make, whether I speak about it publicly or not. Every single one of the individuals on this committee could make a similar decision. They choose not to. I understand that also puts me in a position where I've got to watch what I'm saying. Over time, a year goes by, and now I got to realize, oh, you know what? That information was private, and I'm not supposed to share it. And that puts you in a particular bad light, or it could if you shared it, right? So it puts you in a position where you've got to hold. You got to keep things secret that need to be secret. I'm coming at this from a particularly. Like all of my professional career in the military, I had a TS or higher, top secret or higher security clearance. It is normal for me. I'm looking at these people. It's not normal for them. They're not thinking of it in those terms, but that's exactly what they could if they were professional about the approach of this decision that they're dealing with and who they're dealing with, the company, the dynamics of this. You want to make a good decision? You got to have the facts. So go do what's necessary for the facts and represent your people the best way that you can. Glenfarne cannot, and you do not want them to present all of their information out in the public because it's counter to what you want, which is low-cost gas. Unless you don't want low-cost gas. But if you say you want low-cost gas, then you do not want Glenfarne to put all of their cards on the table, because that is the quickest way to escalate the cost of gas. Maybe not quickest. It is one of the quickest. The quickest way would be for the legislature to pass a bill that taxes them out of existence. So Frank asks if that's a conflict of interest. Is what a conflict of interest? Is me signing an NDA a conflict of interest? How am I going to benefit personally from that? Conflict of interest is if I go to vote, I'm personally going to gain something from the actions that I'm taking or actions that I don't take. But that's why I would declare a conflict of interest, that I'm going to personally benefit. I don't see any conflict of interest with me going and saying I'm going to keep confidential information confidential. I'm going to go vote the way I need to vote. I'm going to put amendments forward the way I'm going to need to put amendments forward, but I'm not going to speak about what I am privy to. I will represent and do my job in the legislature. I mean, this is all stuff that I thought about. I'm able to vote. I'm able to communicate my reasoning for my vote in a manner that doesn't give away the confidentiality. I'm able to do my job in the military with a top secret clearance and still have friends that don't have top secret clearance, still have other military members that don't have top secret clearance. I can still do my job and communicate and do everything that's necessary. You just compartmentalize the information that you don't need to make public. This group of people here can't operate in that environment. They're not experienced at it. I mean, maybe they could, maybe they have the capacity, but they don't have the experience. It's just not something that the legislature does. I mean, it doesn't do $40 billion or $60 billion pipeline projects either, right? I mean, this is completely out of the norm for what the legislature is normally working on. But it is, in my opinion, completely acceptable for these legislators to go down that road for certain information at a certain particular time for a certain vote. I think that this would be, why would we not want them to have those details? Anyway, that's just me. That's my opinion. I'm one guy. Anyway, let's see what else you guys have to say there since I spilled my beans. Frank says it has to go to executive session. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, somebody else said something about they wouldn't be able to keep this. Yeah. Craig, I thought you said this, Craig. Zero chance they would abide by the confidentiality. Yeah, I think that it is highly likely that things would slip out without people really thinking about it. That's what I think. I don't think anybody would be like, oh, you know what? I've got secrets. I'm going to go spill them. You know what? A few beers, a few glasses of wine. Like, you know what I know? I don't think that there would be bad motive. I just think that it would naturally trickle out of these people's mouths. But that's a sign of professionalism, or the lack of professionalism, right? It shouldn't. Yeah, Chris, I don't know what happened with the weather. Global warming finally hit. I walked out this afternoon and it was significantly warmer than it was this morning. I totally recognized it. It's awesome to have some warm temperatures here on the Kenai. I don't know whether it's 70 degrees out, but yeah. This is the issue. If the locals are going to tax at the same rate that they tax everything else, then you're not going to have low cost gas. But this is why I've been that I think that there's another structure that can be put forward, which is a contractual arrangement between the company and the municipality, which would then be enforced in court. I think that is the way forward here, and I think that the project and the municipalities can do that negotiation without the state being involved. Do constituents deserve transparency? Do constituents deserve transparency? I think that they probably think they do, but constituents also don't know how to put together a $60 billion pipeline deal or a $40 billion or anything like that. Most people are probably looking at this and saying, Ben, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. Glenfarne just needs to cough up the data. They also are not going to know what the consequences are for that action. Or maybe they don't care. I don't know. Most people are not going to understand why it's important for Glenfarne to not disclose while they're negotiating and while they're putting together a project and putting together contracts, why they need to keep some of that information proprietary, close hold to the company. Most people aren't going to understand that. So, do constituents deserve transparency? Yes, they deserve transparency. I am their employee. As a representative, I am their employee, so they deserve transparency. And I'm going to tell them that in order for me to represent you effectively, I have signed a non-disclosure on certain information that I am now privy to. And how that benefits you through me is that I can make really good decisions when it comes time to vote, because I have all of the facts. If I don't do this, then I only have part of the facts. So do you want me to have all of the facts, or do you want me to have part of the facts when I go to vote? I'm casting a vote on your behalf. What do you want? That's the way I look at it. All right. We have crossed the 2.5 hour mark, and it is still, well, it's 9:30. There's not much night left to go out and enjoy the heat. All right, folks. Look, I appreciate you guys. Oops, got the wrong one there. Joining me tonight and catching up with what happened in the finance realm with regard to the pipeline. I kind of sense that we're getting closer, but we're not there yet. I sure hope that they've got some outcome. To hear some of the legislators talking about getting specifics in order to create amendments. That's the process, the legislative process working itself out. It's messy, it's time consuming, it's frustrating, but that's the process. So probably, I think Chair Foster said next Monday they would like to be having conversations about amendments. So we'll hear some more information for the rest of this week, and then get into the actual amending of the bill beginning next week. That's what I think is the plan right now. So hopefully, keep fingers crossed that they make some good decisions, and if not, you're going to go into an election season and you're going to own it. Either way, you're going to own it. You either get blamed for not having a pipeline, or you get blamed for giving away the resources to the evil company. Which you're going to catch the blame either way. So hopefully we get a pipeline out of it, because that's what we need. We need low cost energy. And unless you're going to wave your magic wand and permit a coal plant or a hydroelectric plant, you don't have any options. And those aren't even options. Those are years and years and years away. Longer than it is to get a pipeline built. Let's put it that way. All right. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Have a good night and enjoy the weather. Adios.